Jake Morrison sat in the briefing room, staring at the holographic display with growing confusion. The alien face rotating before him had silver skin that seemed to glow, 4 arms, and eyes that looked like someone had poured entire galaxies into them. This was Princess Lyranis of the Valerian Empire, and apparently Jake was supposed to spend the next 6 months with her. "You'll be her cultural companion," Commander Lisa Hayes said, tapping her tablet. "It's a great honor. The Valerians specifically requested someone with your background." Jake wasn't so sure about that. He was 28 years old and had spent most of his career studying alien TV shows and writing reports that nobody read. He wasn't a diplomat or a soldier. He was just a guy who happened to be good at understanding how aliens thought. "What exactly does a cultural companion do?" Jake asked. Lisa smiled. "You'll teach her about human culture, art, music, literature, that sort of thing. Maybe learn some Valerian customs in return. It's basically a cultural exchange program." That didn't sound too bad. Jake had been to plenty of boring conferences and meetings. He could handle talking about Earth culture for a few months. At least the Valerian homeworld would be interesting to see. "When do I leave?" "Tomorrow morning. The shuttle Meridian is already prepared." Jake spent that night packing and trying not to think too hard about what he was doing. His apartment felt small and comfortable, and he wondered if he'd miss it. Probably not. His life on Earth had become routine and a bit boring. Maybe this assignment was exactly what he needed. The next morning, Jake boarded the Meridian with a small bag of personal items. The ship was sleek and modern, designed for diplomatic missions. Lisa came along to brief him during the journey. "The Valerians are very formal," she explained as they sat in the ship's lounge. "Always address the princess with proper titles. Never touch her without permission. Their culture values respect and tradition above everything else." Jake took notes on his tablet, though he'd already studied most of this. The Valerians had made contact with Earth 5 years ago, and since then relations had been careful and polite. They were far more advanced than humans with technology that seemed like magic. But they were also cautious and slow to trust. The journey took 3 days. Jake spent most of it reading about Valerian history and practicing their language. It was a difficult language with sounds that human throats weren't really designed to make. But he could manage basic conversation. When they finally arrived at the Thesera Prime, Jake pressed his face against the viewing window like a kid. The planet was beautiful. 3 suns hung in the sky, casting rainbow light across everything. The cities below looked like they were made of crystal and light, buildings that seemed to grow organically rather than being constructed. "Impressive, isn't it?" Lisa said, standing beside him. "It's incredible," Jake breathed. They landed at a spaceport that was bigger than any city Jake had ever seen. Valerian ships of all sizes moved through the air with impossible grace. The moment Jake stepped off the Meridian, he felt the difference. The air was thicker here, and everything smelled faintly of something like cinnamon and electricity. A Valerian official met them at the landing pad. He was tall, maybe 8 feet, with blue skin and the characteristic 4 arms. He wore robes that shifted colors as he moved. "Welcome to Thesera Prime," the official said in perfect English. "I am Coordinator Zenth. Please follow me." They were taken through the spaceport in a vehicle that hovered silently above the ground. Jake stared out the windows at everything they passed. Valerians walked the streets in groups, their skin colors ranging from silver to blue to deep purple. Some had different numbers of arms or eyes. The diversity was stunning. The royal palace sat at the center of the capital city. It was enormous, a structure that seemed to breathe and pulse with some kind of living energy. The walls were made of a material that looked like crystal but bent and flowed like water. "The princess is waiting in the greeting hall," Zenth said as they entered through massive doors. Jake's heart was pounding now. This was it. He was about to meet an alien princess. He tried to remember all the proper greeting protocols Lisa had drilled into him. The greeting hall was a vast space with a ceiling so high Jake couldn't see it. Light poured down from somewhere above, creating patterns on the floor. At the far end of the hall stood Princess Lyranis. She was even more impressive in person. 7 feet tall with silver skin that actually glowed faintly. Her 4 arms were held in a formal position, 2 at her sides and 2 clasped in front of her. She wore robes of deep purple that seemed to move on their own. Her eyes fixed on Jake as he approached, and he felt like she was looking straight through him. Jake stopped at the appropriate distance and bowed as Lisa had taught him. "Your Highness, I am Jake Morrison. I'm honored to serve as your cultural companion," The princess studied him for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was melodic but carried weight. Jake Morrison of Earth, you are here to fulfill the bonding trials. We begin at dawn. Jake's mind went blank. I'm sorry, what? The bonding trials, Princess Lyranis repeated, as if this explained everything. It is why you were summoned. Did your people not inform you? Jake looked at Lisa, who had gone pale. Commander Hayes, what is she talking about? Lisa was frantically typing on her tablet, pulling up translation files. Her face showed growing horror as she read. Oh no, no. What? Jake demanded. There was a translation error, Lisa said quietly. Cultural companion doesn't mean what we thought it meant. In Valerian, the term means something more like trial partner or challenge companion. Jake felt cold. What kind of trials? Princess Lyranis tilted her head, an almost curious gesture. The trials to prove my worth as a leader. Combat, diplomacy, mental endurance, and emotional synchronization. They are dangerous but necessary. I chose a human partner to demonstrate the unity between our peoples. Dangerous? Jake's voice cracked slightly. How dangerous? Some have died, the princess said simply. But you are not required to participate if you lack courage. I can request another partner, though it will delay my trials by several months. Lisa grabbed Jake's arm. We need to contact Earth Command immediately. This is not what we agreed to. But Jake was looking at the princess. Despite her formal tone, he saw something in her expression. Uncertainty, maybe. Or hope. She needed this. And if he backed out now, it would embarrass her and possibly damage relations between Earth and the Valerian Empire. He took a deep breath. When do we start? Princess Lyranis's eyes seemed to brighten slightly. You accept the challenge? I guess I do, Jake said, trying to sound more confident than he felt. Though I should warn you, I'm not exactly a warrior. We shall see, the princess said. Rest tonight. Tomorrow your training begins. As Jake was led to his quarters, his mind was racing. What had he just agreed to? He was supposed to be teaching poetry and discussing Earth music, not risking his life in alien trials. But it was too late now. He'd given his word. He just hoped he'd survive long enough to regret it. Jake woke before dawn in a room that felt more like being inside a living organism than a bedroom. The walls glowed softly, adjusting their light based on his sleep patterns. The bed had molded itself perfectly to his body. It was comfortable, but deeply strange. He dressed in the clothes that had been provided, a simple outfit that looked human enough but was made from some Valerian material that adjusted its temperature automatically. When he stepped outside his quarters, a young Valerian attendant was waiting. The princess requires your presence in the training chamber, the attendant said. Jake followed him through corridors that seemed to shift and change. He wondered if he'd ever be able to find his way around this place. They descended several levels and emerged into a vast circular room with a high ceiling. Princess Lyranis stood in the center, now wearing form-fitting armor that gleamed in the light. Good morning, Jake Morrison, she said. Today I will explain what you have agreed to. Jake walked closer, trying not to show how nervous he felt. I'm listening. The princess gestured with two of her forearms and holographic images appeared in the air around them. There are 5 trials in total. Each tests a different aspect of fitness to rule. The first is the trial of navigation through the singing caves. The second is the trial of diplomatic wisdom before the Council of Elders. The third is the trial of physical endurance. The fourth is the trial of strategic combat. And the fifth is the trial of emotional synchronization. The holographic images showed each trial in detail. Jake's stomach dropped as he watched. The singing caves looked like a nightmare of crystal formations and deadly sound waves. The council chamber showed stern-looking Valerians who made Earth's toughest politicians look friendly. The other trials looked even worse. These trials were designed for Valerians, Jake said slowly. I'm human. My body can't handle some of this. I am aware, Princess Lyranis said. That is why we will train. You have 1 month to prepare before we begin. 1 month. Jake wanted to laugh. He needed about 10 years, maybe more. Why did you choose a human partner? Jake asked. Wouldn't another Valerian be easier? The princess was quiet for a moment. When she spoke, her voice was softer. My eldest brother, Prince Vexer, believes humans are weak and unworthy of alliance with our empire. He has argued against cooperation with Earth since first contact. By completing these trials with a human partner, I prove him wrong. I show that unity between our species is not just possible, but beneficial. No pressure then, Jake muttered. Something that might have been amusement flickered across the princess's face. You have humor even in fear. That is interesting. They began training immediately. The princess started with the basics, teaching Jake how to move properly in Thessera Prime's slightly higher gravity. She showed him Valerian combat stances and explained how sound could be used as both a weapon and a tool. Jake struggled with everything. His body wasn't designed for Valerian martial arts. He couldn't make the same movements with only 2 arms. But he tried his best, and slowly, very slowly, he started to improve. During a break, Jake sat against the wall, breathing hard. Princess Lyranis approached and sat beside him, which surprised him. She'd been formal and distant until now. You are frustrated, she observed. I'm way out of my depth here, Jake admitted. I study alien cultures for a living. I'm not a fighter or an athlete. I'm just a regular guy who happened to know a lot about how Valerians think. Why did you agree to the trials if you feel unprepared? Jake considered the question. Because you needed me to, and because backing out would have caused problems between our peoples. Sometimes you do things because they're necessary, not because you're ready for them. The princess tilted her head in that curious way she had. That is a wise answer. Perhaps there is more to you than physical strength. Let's hope so, Jake said, because I'm pretty sure I don't have much of that. Over the next few weeks, Jake and Princess Lyranis spent nearly every waking hour together. They trained in the morning, studied Valerian history and protocol in the afternoon, and ran through trial simulations in the evening. It was exhausting, but Jake found himself adapting. More importantly, he and the princess began to actually talk to each other. During one late-night study session, Jake asked her about her family. I have 2 brothers, Lyranis explained. Vexer is the eldest and believes he should rule absolutely. Kalen is the youngest and has no interest in politics whatsoever. I am in the middle, trying to find balance. Do you want to be a leader? Jake asked. The princess was quiet for a long time. I do not know. It is what is expected of me. What I was raised for, but sometimes I wonder what it would be like to simply explore the galaxy, to see new worlds without the weight of duty on my shoulders. Jake understood that feeling completely. I spent years studying to be a diplomat, but what I really wanted was to be an explorer, someone who discovered new things instead of just reading about them. Then we are alike, Lyranis said softly, both of us doing what we should instead of what we wish. That conversation changed something between them. They weren't just trial partners anymore. They were becoming friends. But the trials were approaching fast. Commander Lisa Hayes visited regularly, each time looking more worried. Earth Command is very concerned, she told Jake during one visit. They didn't realize how dangerous this would be. They want to pull you out. It's too late for that, Jake said. I gave my word. And besides, if I leave now, it'll damage everything we've been building with the Valerians. But if you die, then I die trying to do something important, Jake interrupted. That's better than living safely and letting this alliance fall apart. Lisa looked at him with something like pride. When did you become so brave? Jake laughed. I'm not brave. I'm terrified. But sometimes you have to do the scary thing anyway. The week before the first trial, Princess Lyranis called Jake to meet her on one of the palace balconies. The 3 suns were setting, painting the sky in colors that Earth had no names for. I must tell you something, the princess said, her voice serious. My brother Vexer has been working against us. He does not want me to succeed in these trials. Wonder, what do you mean? Jake asked. He has influence with some of the trial masters. I believe he will try to make the trials more difficult than they should be, perhaps even dangerous enough to ensure failure. Jake felt a chill run down his spine. Can he do that? He should not be able to, but Vexer has never cared much for rules. You should know this risk before we begin. I would not blame you for withdrawing. Jake looked out at the alien city spread below them, glowing in the twilight. He thought about Earth, about his small apartment and his boring job. Then he thought about what they were trying to accomplish here, building bridges between 2 completely different civilizations. I'm not backing out, he said firmly. We're in this together now. Princess Lyranis turned to look at him, and for the first time Jake saw genuine warmth in her expression. You are braver than you believe, Jake Morrison. Perhaps my choice of a human partner was wiser than even I knew. That night Jake couldn't sleep. He kept running through everything he'd learned, every technique and piece of knowledge. Tomorrow they would face the singing caves, and despite all his training, he had no idea if he was ready. But ready or not, dawn would come. The trials would begin. And Jake Morrison, a simple cultural liaison from Earth, would have to find courage he didn't know he possessed. He just hoped it would be enough. Jake found Princess Lyranis in her meditation chamber, a quiet room where the walls displayed slowly moving patterns of light. She looked up when he entered, immediately sensing something was wrong. "What has happened?" Jake showed her the video. They watched together as Prince Vexor handed payment crystals to the trial masters, discussing how to make the Gauntlet of Worthy Souls properly challenging for a human. The way he said it made clear what he really meant. "He means to kill you," Lyranis said, her voice tight with anger, "and disgrace me in the process. Can we report this?" Jake asked. "Show it to your father or someone?" Lyranis shook her head. "The recording is anonymous. Without knowing who sent it, we cannot prove it is real. Vexor would claim it is a forgery designed to discredit him, and by Valerian law, I cannot accuse a royal family member without absolute proof. So we just walk into his trap?" "We walk into the gauntlet knowing it is a trap," Lyranis corrected. "That gives us an advantage. And whoever sent this message clearly wishes us to succeed. We are not alone." They had 3 days to prepare. Jake and Lyranis trained harder than ever, running through combat scenarios and problem-solving exercises. Lyranis taught Jake every trick she knew about Valerian combat. Jake shared human strategies for dealing with unpredictable situations. During a break on the second day, Jake asked something that had been bothering him. "After the trials are over, what happens to me?" Lyranis looked at him for a long moment. "You return to Earth, I assume, unless you wish to stay. Would that be allowed? I could request you as a permanent liaison. You have proven yourself valuable." She hesitated. "And I would miss our conversations." Jake felt warmth spread through his chest. "I'd miss them too." They didn't say more, but something had shifted between them. The bond created by the emotional synchronization trial had grown into genuine friendship, maybe something even deeper. Jake wasn't sure what a relationship between a human and a Valerian princess would look like, but he wanted to find out. The day of the final trial arrived. The Gauntlet of Worthy Souls was held in a massive arena beneath the palace. It was a shifting maze filled with challenges, both physical and mental. Jake and Lyranis stood at the entrance, both wearing light armor. The Emperor himself was present, sitting in the royal box with other nobles. Prince Vexor sat beside him, his expression carefully neutral. But Jake caught the cold satisfaction in his eyes. "The trial begins when you enter," the head trial master announced. "You must reach the center and retrieve the Scepter of Unity. Work together or fail separately. May your souls prove worthy." The doors opened. Jake and Lyranis stepped into darkness. Immediately, the maze came alive. Walls shifted and moved around them. Holographic enemies appeared, wielding weapons. Jake and Lyranis moved back to back, defending each other. The holograms were tough, but they'd trained for this. Jake used his smaller size to dodge and strike quickly. Lyranis used her forearms to block and counter. They moved through the maze, solving puzzles and avoiding traps. But after 30 minutes, Jake realized something was wrong. The challenges were getting harder, much harder than they should be. Enemies that should have been holograms hit with real force. Traps that should have been frightening but safe were actually dangerous. "Vexor has changed the rules," Lyranis said grimly. "We must be more careful." They pressed forward. Jake's human unpredictability became their greatest asset. Where Valerians thought logically and traditionally, Jake improvised. He found shortcuts by looking at patterns the maze designers hadn't expected anyone to notice. He tricked enemies by doing things that made no tactical sense but worked anyway. At one point, they faced a locked door with a complex puzzle. Lyranis studied it carefully, trying to solve it the proper way. Jake looked at it for a moment, then kicked it hard in a specific spot. The door mechanism broke and swung open. "That works too," Lyranis said with what might have been amusement. They were halfway through when they entered a large chamber and found Prince Vexor waiting for them. "Brother," Lyranis said coldly, "you should not be here." "I am here to ensure the integrity of the trial," Vexor replied. He was even larger than Lyranis, with dark purple skin and armor that looked military grade. "I want to see if your human pet is truly worthy." "Jake has proven himself multiple times," Lyranis said. Vexor's laugh was ugly. "Has he? Let us test that." He moved with shocking speed, attacking Jake before either of them could react. His fist, larger than Jake's head, slammed into Jake's chest and sent him flying backward. Pain exploded through Jake's ribs. Lyranus immediately attacked her brother, but Vexor had been trained for combat since childhood. They fought forearms against forearms, but Vexor was stronger and more skilled, and Lyranus was held back by law. She couldn't seriously harm a member of the royal family without dire consequences. Jake struggled to his feet, his chest screaming in pain. He saw Vexor drive Lyranus back, forcing her against a wall. The prince pulled out a weapon, a small device that glowed with dangerous energy. "This weapon is forbidden in the trials," Vexor said calmly. "But who will prove I brought it? The human will be dead, and you will be disgraced by failing to protect your partner." He aimed the weapon at Lyranus. Jake didn't think. He just moved. He threw himself in front of Lyranus just as Vexor fired. The energy blast hit Jake in the shoulder and chest. The pain was beyond anything he'd ever felt. It burned and tore through him like liquid fire. Jake fell, his vision going dark at the edges. He heard Lyranus scream, a sound of pure rage and grief. Through blurring eyes, he saw something he'd never seen before. Princess Lyranus's skin began to glow brighter and brighter. Energy crackled around her forearms. She'd been holding back her entire life, suppressing her true power to appear more controlled and diplomatic. Not anymore. She moved like lightning, striking Vexor with force that sent him crashing into the wall. His armor cracked. His weapon shattered. In seconds, the fight was over. Vexor lay on the ground, defeated and gasping. Guards rushed into the chamber, alerted by the commotion. Behind them came the Emperor himself, his face dark with fury. "What is the meaning of this?" the Emperor demanded. Lyranus pointed at the remains of the forbidden weapon. "My brother attempted to murder my trial partner using prohibited equipment. He has violated every sacred rule of the trials." Vexor tried to protest, but the evidence was clear. The weapon's energy signature matched his personal armory. Security footage from the maze itself showed him entering illegally, and screens throughout the arena suddenly lit up with the video Jake had received, now being broadcast by whoever their mysterious ally was. The Emperor's expression went from fury to cold rage. "Vexor, you are under arrest. You will face judgment for your crimes." But Jake barely heard any of it. The pain was overwhelming, dragging him down into darkness. The last thing he felt was Lyranus's hands, all four of them, holding him gently as she shouted for medical help. Then everything went black. Jake floated in darkness for a time that felt like seconds and centuries at once. He heard voices, felt strange sensations but couldn't quite grasp consciousness. Sometimes he felt Lyranis's presence, her voice talking to him even when he couldn't respond. Sometimes he felt her bioelectric field surrounding him, supporting his failing body. And sometimes he dreamed. He dreamed of the stars, of Earth and Thessara Prime, of a future that suddenly seemed uncertain. Slowly, painfully, Jake began to climb back toward consciousness. His body hurt everywhere, but it was a dull ache rather than the sharp agony from before. He tried to open his eyes, soft light, a ceiling that glowed gently, medical equipment around him. And beside his bed, slumped in a chair with all four arms wrapped around herself, Princess Lyranus slept. She looked exhausted, her silver skin dim instead of glowing. How long had she been there? Jake tried to speak, but his throat was too dry. He made a small sound, barely a whisper. But it was enough. Lyranus's eyes opened instantly. When she saw him awake, her expression transformed. Relief and joy and something deeper, something Jake didn't have a name for. "You are awake," she breathed. I feared." "How long?" Jake managed to ask. 2 days. "The doctor said you would recover, but I needed to see it myself." She reached out and took his hand gently. "You nearly died to save me." "Couldn't let him hurt you," Jake said. Lyranus's eyes, those impossible galaxy eyes, filled with something that looked like tears. "You are the bravest person I have ever known, Jake Morrison." Jake wanted to say something meaningful, something worthy of the moment. But all he could manage was, "Did we pass the trial?" Lyranus laughed, a sound of pure joy. "Yes, you impossible human. We passed." The entrance to the singing caves looked like the mouth of some ancient beast. Jake stood beside Princess Lyranus, staring into the darkness while a crowd of Valerian nobles watched from a safe distance. His heart hammered in his chest. "Remember your training," Lyranus said quietly. Listen to the harmonics. Human ears may hear what mine cannot. A trial master, an elderly Valerian with deep purple skin, stepped forward. The trial of navigation begins now. You must reach the heart chamber and retrieve the crystal of resonance. Any sound above a whisper may trigger the cave's defenses. Some frequencies can shatter bone. Proceed carefully. Jake and Lyranus entered the cave together. Almost immediately the temperature dropped. The walls around them were covered in crystal formations that caught and reflected the light from their glow sticks. Everything was eerily silent. They moved slowly, Jake's human ears straining to catch any sound. After about 10 minutes, he heard it, a low humming that was barely perceptible. "Stop," he whispered. "There's something ahead." Lyranus froze. Her forearms spread slightly, ready for danger. "I hear nothing." "It's very low frequency," Jake explained, remembering his training. "Below what Valerians can detect. But if we go forward, we'll trigger it." They carefully moved to the right, finding a narrow passage that Jake's ears told him was safe. As they squeezed through, Jake realized something important. His human limitations were actually an advantage here. Valerian hearing was more precise in most ways, but humans could detect lower frequencies. They continued deeper into the caves. Several times, Jake detected dangerous sound patterns and guided them around them. Lyranus used her superior strength and extra arms to help them climb over obstacles and squeeze through tight spaces. They were working together, each one's strengths covering the other's weaknesses. Then they reached a vast chamber filled with hanging crystals. The crystal of resonance sat on a pedestal in the center, glowing with soft blue light. "This seems too easy," Jake said. "It is a trap," Lyranus agreed. "The moment we step into that chamber, something will happen." They studied the room carefully. Jake noticed that the crystals were arranged in a specific pattern. "It's like a musical instrument," he said. "If we make the right sound, maybe we can cross safely." Lyranus looked at him with what might have been respect. "You are learning to think like a Valerian." Together, they experimented with different tones, humming softly. Finally, they found a harmonic that made the crystals glow gently. When they walked forward while maintaining that tone, the crystals remained peaceful. They retrieved the crystal of resonance and made their way back out. The crowd of nobles seemed surprised when they emerged successful. Jake caught sight of a large Valerian in the back, his expression dark with anger. That must be Prince Vexor. The second trial came a week later. Jake sat in the council chamber, surrounded by 12 elderly Valerians who looked at him like he was an interesting but ultimately insignificant creature. This trial required him to discuss Valerian philosophy and argue points of governance, all while maintaining perfect formal posture. The questions started simple but quickly became complex. Jake drew on everything he'd studied, but more importantly, he spoke honestly about the human perspective. "You say that unity requires hierarchy," Jake said to one elder. "But humans have learned that true strength comes from diversity of thought. When everyone thinks the same way, you miss important perspectives. Are you suggesting our ways are wrong?" the elder asked sharply. "No, honored elder. I'm suggesting that different ways can both be right. That's what makes alliance valuable." The debate went on for hours. Jake's back screamed in pain from maintaining the formal posture. His throat was dry from speaking. But he kept going, and gradually, some of the elders began to nod at his points. During the 5th hour, Jake's back spasmed. He nearly collapsed, but caught himself at the last second. At the same moment, he felt a strange tingling sensation, almost like static electricity. He glanced at Princess Lyranus, who stood nearby. She was looking straight ahead, but her lower left hand made a subtle gesture. She was helping him somehow, using her bioelectric field to support his muscles. It was against the rules, but so subtle that no one could prove it. Jake made it through the 6th hour and completed the trial. The council declared them successful, though barely. As they left the chamber, Jake whispered, "Thank you." "I do not know what you mean," Lyranus replied, but there was warmth in her voice. The third trial, physical endurance, was brutal. Jake had to run an obstacle course that was designed for beings much stronger than humans. He fell, scraped his skin raw, and nearly gave up a dozen times. But Lyranus was running beside him, encouraging him, and somehow he finished. The fourth trial, strategic combat, was even harder. Jake had to fight holographic opponents using Valerian combat techniques. His human body couldn't move the way Valerian bodies could, so he had to adapt, using speed and unpredictability instead of strength. He lost more matches than he won, but he won enough. Then came the 5th trial, And everything changed. The trial of emotional synchronization required Jake and Lyranis to enter a shared mental space through Valerian technology. They would be connected directly, mind to mind, experiencing each other's memories and emotions. Jake was terrified. What would the princess see in his mind? All his doubts and fears? His ordinary life and simple dreams? They sat facing each other in a quiet chamber. Technicians attached strange devices to their heads. When the machine activated, Jake felt like he was falling. Suddenly, he wasn't Jake anymore. He was Lyranis, a young child in the palace learning that her life would never be her own. He felt the weight of expectations pressing down on her from every side. He felt her loneliness, surrounded by people but truly known by none. He felt her secret dreams of freedom, of exploring the galaxy without duty chaining her down. Then he was Jake again. But Lyranis was there too, seeing through his eyes. She experienced his memories. Growing up in a small town on Earth, watching the stars and dreaming of adventure, studying hard to join the diplomatic corps, hoping it would give him purpose. The slow realization that his life had become routine and empty. Their minds circled each other, sharing moments of joy and pain. Jake saw Lyranis' first time seeing the stars from space, her wonder and excitement. Lyranis saw Jake's graduation day, his pride mixed with uncertainty about the future. They saw each other's fears. Jake's fear of being ordinary, of living and dying without ever mattering. Lyranis' fear of failing her people, of being crushed under the weight of leadership. And they saw each other's hopes. Jake hoped to find meaning and purpose. Lyranis hoped to be more than just her title, to be seen as a person rather than a princess. When they emerged from the shared space, both of them were crying. It was the most intense experience of Jake's life. He felt like he truly knew Lyranis now. Not as an alien princess, but as a person who was just as lost and searching as he was. "I see you now," Lyranis said softly, her voice shaking with emotion. "Truly see you." "I see you too," Jake replied. The trial master declared them successful. The emotional synchronization had been complete and stable, but Jake barely heard it. He was still processing everything he'd experienced. That evening, they sat together in Lyranis' private quarters, something that would have been unthinkable before. They didn't speak much. They didn't need to. The connection between them had become something profound. "There is one trial left," Lyranis finally said. "The gauntlet of worthy souls. It is the most dangerous." "We'll face it together," Jake said. "Yes," she agreed. "Together." But later that night, alone in his room, Jake received a message on his tablet. It was from someone in the palace, someone who didn't give their name. The message contained a video file. Jake watched it and felt his blood run cold. It showed Prince Vexor meeting with the trial masters, bribing them to make the final trial more dangerous. Lethal, even. There were weapons that shouldn't be there. Traps that went far beyond what tradition allowed. Vexor was trying to kill them. Jake stared at the message for a long time, then went to find Lyranis. She needed to know what her brother was planning. They'd faced 4 trials together and succeeded against the odds, but the final trial might be the one that actually killed them. Jake spent the next week recovering in the medical facility. The Valerian doctors were amazed that a human body could survive what he'd been through. They used technologies that seemed like magic, healing his wounds from the inside out. Human doctors consulted from Earth, working together with the Valerians to make sure Jake's recovery was complete. Princess Lyranis visited every day. Sometimes they talked. Sometimes they just sat together in comfortable silence. The bond between them had grown into something neither of them fully understood, but both valued deeply. On the 5th day, the Emperor himself came to visit. He was an imposing figure, even taller than his children, with skin that shifted between deep purple and gold. Jake tried to get out of bed, but the Emperor waved him back down. "Rest, Jake Morrison. You have earned it." "Your Majesty," Jake said respectfully. "I owe you an apology," the Emperor said, his voice heavy. "My son's actions brought shame to our family and nearly cost you your life. He has been stripped of all titles and privileges. He is exiled to a remote colony world where he can harm no one." "I'm sorry it came to that," Jake said honestly. The Emperor looked at him with interest. "You pity him? Even after what he did?" "I pity anyone who lets hate control them," Jake replied. "He could have done great things, but he chose to fear and destroy instead of build and understand." Wise words. The Emperor paused. "My daughter speaks very highly of you." She says you showed courage far beyond what should be expected, and wisdom beyond your years. Jake felt his face warm. I just did what felt right. That is precisely what makes it courageous. The Emperor reached into his robes and pulled out a small crystal medallion. This is the title of Friend of the Empire. It has been granted to only 12 beings in our entire history. You are the first human to receive it. Jake took the medallion, feeling its weight. It was warm to the touch and seemed to pulse with a gentle light. Thank you, Your Majesty. I'm honored. After the Emperor left, Lyranis entered. She looked at the medallion and smiled. Father never gives that lightly. You must have impressed him greatly. I think he just felt bad about his son trying to kill me, Jake joked. No, Lyranis said seriously. He sees what I see. That humans have something we Valerians have forgotten, a flexibility of spirit, a creative approach to problems. You think in ways we do not, and that makes you valuable. She sat beside his bed, her expression becoming uncertain. Jake, I must ask you something. The trials are officially complete. You are free to return to Earth whenever you wish. Earth Command has been very insistent about extracting you. Jake's heart sank a little. He'd known this was coming, but hearing it still hurt. What about you? What happens now? I have been granted new responsibilities within the Empire. I am to lead a new initiative for interspecies cooperation, building bridges between Valerians and other civilizations. She looked at him hopefully. I requested that you be my official liaison and advisor, if you wish to stay. Jake sat up carefully, ignoring the protests from his still-healing body. Stay here? On Thesera Prime? Or travel, Lyranis added quickly. The position would involve visiting many worlds, meeting different species, establishing relations. You said once that you wanted to be an explorer. This would give you that chance. And I'd be working with you? Yes, Lyranis said softly. If that is something you would want. Jake thought about Earth, his small apartment, his boring reports, the life he'd left behind that already felt like it belonged to someone else. Then he thought about the last few months. The challenges, the danger, but also the wonder, and most of all, the connection he'd found with this impossible princess who'd somehow become his closest friend. I want to stay, Jake said. Lyranis's expression lit up like one of Thesera Prime's 3 suns. Truly? Truly. But I have one condition. She tilted her head curiously. What condition? You have to let me teach you about Earth coffee. Because I've tried that Valerian drink you call refreshment and it tastes like liquid metal. Lyranis laughed, a sound that Jake had come to love. I accept your condition. 3 weeks later, Jake was finally cleared for full activity. He'd moved into permanent quarters in the palace, rooms that were larger and more comfortable than his entire Earth apartment. He'd even managed to get some human items shipped from Earth, including a coffee maker that confused the Valerian servants. Commander Lisa Hayes came for one final visit before returning to Earth. She found Jake on a balcony overlooking the city, watching the 3 suns set. You've really decided to stay, she said. I have, Jake confirmed. Earth Command isn't happy. They wanted you home for debriefing, media appearances, the whole thing. Jake shrugged. I'll do a video interview. But my life is here now. Lisa studied him. You've changed. You're not the same unsure analyst who left Earth a few months ago. I found something here, Jake said. Purpose, maybe. Or maybe just the courage to go after what I actually want instead of what I'm supposed to want. And what do you want? Jake looked back toward the palace where he knew Lyranis was preparing for their first official mission together. To build bridges, to explore, to prove that different species can work together and make each other better. And to do it with someone who understands me? Lisa smiled. You're in love with her, aren't you? Jake felt his face heat up. It's not that simple. We're different species. I don't even know if Valerians feel that kind of connection. After everything I've seen, I think you'll figure it out, Lisa said. Good luck, Jake. You're doing important work here. After she left, Jake went to find Lyranis. She was in the strategy room, reviewing plans for their upcoming visit to a water world inhabited by aquatic beings. Ready for our first real mission? She asked. As ready as I'll ever be, Jake said, though I should warn you I don't swim very well. We will work together, Lyranis said, as we always have. She moved closer to him, and for a moment they just looked at each other. So much had changed since that first meeting in the greeting hall. Jake had been terrified then, completely unprepared for what was coming. Now he still wasn't entirely prepared. But he was ready. "What are you thinking?" Lyranus asked softly. "I'm thinking about how I came here expecting to teach you about human poetry and music. And instead I ended up learning more about myself than I ever thought possible." "I learned as well," Lyranus said. "I learned that strength is not just physical power or political authority. Sometimes it is the courage to sacrifice yourself for another, to stand beside someone who is different and say that difference makes us stronger together." "Very diplomatic," Jake teased. "You've been practicing." "I have a good advisor," she replied, and there was warmth in her voice that made Jake's heart beat faster. They stood on the balcony of Lyranus's quarters that evening, looking out at the city. The alien stars were coming out, constellations that Jake was learning to recognize. "Do you miss Earth?" Lyranus asked. "Sometimes," Jake admitted. "I miss the ocean. The way rain smells. Pizza. What is pizza?" "It's complicated, but amazing. I'll make you some someday." "I would like that." Lyranus paused. "Jake, I must tell you something. The emotional synchronization trial, it created a bond between us. It is not common among my people, but when it happens it is considered sacred. A connection of souls." Jake turned to look at her. "What does that mean?" "It means I understand you in ways I understand no one else. And I value that understanding more than any title or position." She hesitated, then continued. "Among my people, such bonds are sometimes more than friendship." "What are you saying?" Jake's heart was pounding. "I am saying that you matter to me, Jake Morrison, not as a political ally or a trial partner. You matter as yourself, and I wish to explore what that means." Jake felt like he couldn't breathe. "I'm human. You're Valerian. We're completely different species." "Yes," Lyranus agreed. "But we have faced trials together, saved each other's lives, shared our deepest fears and hopes. If that is not the foundation for something meaningful, I do not know what is." Jake thought about all the reasons why this was complicated. The cultural differences, the physical differences, the political implications. But then he thought about how he felt when he was with her. Understood, valued, like he'd finally found where he belonged. "I'd like to explore that too," he said, quietly. Lyranus's smile was like sunrise. She reached out with one of her 4 hands and Jake took it. Her skin was warm and electric against his. They stood there together, human and Valerian, looking out at a future that neither of them had planned but both wanted to discover. "Where do we start?" Jake asked. "Together," Lyranus said simply. "We start together." In the distance, ships lifted off from the spaceport heading to distant stars. Soon Jake and Lyranus would be on one of those ships, beginning their work to build bridges between civilizations. There would be challenges ahead, misunderstandings to overcome, and probably more dangers to face. But Jake wasn't afraid anymore. He'd been sent to please an alien princess, to teach her about human culture and cement an alliance. Instead, he'd found something much more valuable. He'd found purpose. He'd found courage. And he'd found someone who saw him not as the person he was supposed to be, but as the person he actually was. That, Jake thought, was worth any risk. The 3 suns set completely, and the alien night embraced them. Tomorrow they would begin their new mission. Tomorrow they